Okay, so this is going to be a quick rundown of Automated Level List Edition, which is an Xedit script that allows you to add an item to level lists automatically. The way this is generally going to work is I'm going to start a section and then I'm going to make a mark over here in this MS Paint. So you can scrub along the bottom of the YouTube video and find the section that you want. Also, if you go to the mod page, in the description section, the headers and detailed information like this right here, you should be able to click them and it should take you directly to that section of the YouTube video. Alright. So the first thing we're going to do is installation. You go to Files, you click Manual Download, it downloads. You go to Downloads, you go to your Skyrim directory. This right here is my Skyrim directory. I'm not sure where your Steam is installed, but it's typically Steam S Common, Skyrim Special Edition. You're looking for the Edit Scripts folder right here. And you take what you've downloaded, the Automated Level List Edition, you open it up, it's got an Edit Scripts folder in it, and you just drag and drop, bam, and you'd be done installing. That's going to make the script show up in the Xedit dropdown. Speaking of which, let's find that. So what you're going to do is you're going to open up Xedit, load your plugins, and then you're going to find whatever mod you want to run this on. You can either run it on a record, you can run it on a header, or you can run it on a file. For the most part, you're going to be running it on records. So you find your record, you right-click, click Apply Script, and then in this drop down somewhere is going to be Automated Level List Edition. Once you find it, you select it, you click OK, and bam, we're at the main menu of the mod. So moving on to main menu section, right? So the way that the UI generally works is that you click on something for more information, like any of these buttons, you click on them, it opens up a menu for that section. But generally speaking, for 90% of users, you're supposed to just be able to click the OK button and forget about it. It's set up such that in most situations, there isn't, it will be able to recognize what you're giving it and implement it in the game in a way that makes sense, in a way that it would be implemented in vanilla Skyrim. Even if it's a mod added item, if it's in a weird slot, it should be able to handle all of those things, theoretically. If it does it, make bug reports. I'll be working on it. So, as for the main menu, there's also little informational deals. If you want a short rundown of what each thing is, and these will enable or disable the section of the mod. There are three main sections: adding to leveled lists, generating and changing conversions, and generating recipes. But we'll get into those more details as we move on. Speaking of which, let's move on to currently selected records. So I'm going to do this. So currently selected records is going to be, just click on the name of the item right there, next to currently selected item. And it's going to bring up this menu. This allows you to switch between the different items that you have selected. These are editable values, right? This is the armor and gold value of an iron boots. If you switch, you see the armor and gold value changes. It will save when you switch, it'll save when you press OK. Pretty normal behavior. This right here is support for male or female only armors, and what you do is you click this, either switch or press OK. And the way that this works is that, for example, right, let's say I have a male only iron armor, and I run this, I click this, and then I click OK. What this is going to do is that since this is, and if it is an iron armor, right, if it has an iron armor value, that's how it determines what it is, it's going to give that armor mesh to the opposite gender. So in plain English, what that means is, if I have a male-only armor, I've downloaded off Nexus, it's got some sweet thing, but it doesn't have a female counterpart, I run this, and the male armor will still be whatever I got off Nexus, the custom mesh, the mod. And the female armor, right, the other gender, will be just the plain old vanilla Skyrim armor. And this prevents armors being invisible or really wonky setups where you've got males wearing female armor message and things are clipping and all that junk. Yeah, this will just solve that outright. This can also be accomplished by adding a female-only armor keyword or female-only to the editor ID of the record in question. It's a bit more advanced, and there is more information about how to do that in the this section, this currently selected record section in the mod page. Alright, we're going to move on to output plugins. So I'm going to start this section. So here in output plugins, you're able to, so like I said, there's 3 sections, and you're able to output to a different plugin for each section if you so desire. For people who aren't familiar much with masters or load orders or any of that junk, I highly recommend that you use the default output plugin. The reason for that is that this plugin is going to need masters for, it's going to have all of your enchantment mods as masters. Obviously the mod that the item is coming from as masters, it's going to have all of the masters from that mod as a master as well. And if you're adding, masters in the random middle bits of your load order, if you have them out of order, it can crash your setup. So if you don't know what a master is, you don't know how to manipulate a load order, I would highly suggest just using the default output plugin. If it doesn't exist already, this mod will create it and stick it at the bottom of your load order, which is exactly where it should be. Alright, moving on to Automated Level List Edition. This is the first of the big sections. So, selected item again. You can switch between the items you have selected. This is a current list of all leveled lists, which sounds ridiculous, but basically this is just all the leveled lists that this item will be added to. Right, and if you open it up, you get the level and the leveled list. You can change the level. You can also click remove to remove that leveled list from the current leveled lists, right? Clear all, obviously, just clears all of the lists out in case you want to start from scratch. This right here expands the menu. Bam. And this is for adding a new leveled list. You would go and you would look for whatever leveled list you're trying to find from, right? Like, say you want to add to a specific Skyrim leveled list, you'd open up Skyrim. And then here in leveled list, you would just find the leveled list that you're looking for. And you would add it at this level. This is editable. And you click add, and it would add it to current lists. So you add new lists, right? And that's it for this menu, but there's this button right here, and it's specifically small and easy to miss because it's very advanced, and we're about to move into that section. So set template, this is very advanced. This is specifically for mod authors, but this is actually how this script works, is what I'm about to explain. So if I open this up, this allows you to set a custom template. And a template, the way that this script works in general, most of the different parts, they work on get template function. And what that function does is it takes your item, whatever item it is, and it looks at the relevant value. So for a weapon, it would be damage. For an armor, it would be the armor value. And then it compares it to the vanilla tiers, right? So it's either an iron tier item or, a dwarven tier or a daedric tier. And it will assign a template item to whatever item you have. So if I have, for example, like this one is iron boots, then it would assign me an iron boots template. And that's how everything works behind the scenes. So whenever it's adding to leveled lists, it's simply adding this item, whatever item you have, to all of the leveled lists that reference iron boots. So any leveled list that iron boots, the vanilla iron boots are in, your item will end up in. For recipe creation, it uses iron boots, the original iron boots, in order to create recipes. And for enchanted versions, it will look at the slot that the item is coming from the template to see what enchantment should be applied to the item. So it will always automatically give you some sort of template, but if you want to do something specific, like on the mod page, the example is if you wanted to, say, add an armor set to the Falmer, since the script is set up such that it defaults to adding items to the player, it implements them for the player, for the player to find them, which is what most people are going to do. But if for some reason you wanted to add an armor to all of the Falmer of Skyrim, you would set a custom template. You would go to Skyrim, and then you'd find the armor group, and then the editor ID for a Falmer armor, and then click OK, and it would reset the template for this item, so that when the script runs, it'll use Falmer as a template, which means it'll create Falmer recipes. It'll add it to all recipes that the Falmer item comes that reference the Falmer item, and so on and so forth. But in general, this is how the script actually works, is using a template item. Alright, that's the spiel. Head back to the main menu. Alright, we're going to start on automated generation of enchanted versions. This was originally its own script. This is my first mod. And this it generates, so your item will automatically, just by its slot, be able to have enchantments applied to it. But whenever you play the game, you may have noticed that on certain enemies, you'll see like an Iron Sword of Frost or an Iron Helmet of Frost Resistance or whatever. And that's what this does, is it specifically creates enchanted versions of an item and then adds them to leveled lists. So, as you can see, it's got a configurable output plugin. This right here, replacing leveled lists, it will always generate the enchanted versions, but if you unclick this, it won't replace, it won't implement it into the leveled lists. And what this does is, in any leveled list that contains the currently selected item, right, like Iron Boots, my test set of Iron Boots, not the vanilla set of Iron Boots, which is confusing, but anyways, anywhere my test set of Iron Boots are found, it will replace it with a leveled list that has, like, default a 90% chance for the regular item and a 10% chance for an enchanted item. For people who are intimately familiar for how leveled list works, this isn't how vanilla does it specifically. Vanilla has a totally different set of NPCs it has for enchanted weapons that always spawn with enchanted weapons, and that's how it does the enchanted system, is it spawns a specific type of NPC. I feel like this is a better implementation overall because you'll get it across chests, and really I think it's just a better implementation overall. I'm hoping to at some point add the ability to implement it in a vanilla way. So allow unenchanting. If you go up to an enchantment table, you're allowed to disenchant items in order to learn their enchantment. If you unclick this, right, if you unclick it, it'll stop that. So with this click, the default behavior is you're allowed to disenchant the item. So this percent chance, this is whether or not to use a percent chance. If you unclick it, you'll just get a 100% chance for an enchanted item. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but that's the same, that's what it does. And you can configure what percent chance you want for an enchanted item. It only goes up to 100. I don't know why you would want to, but yeah, it only goes up to 100. Enchantment strength is a multiplier. 100% is a 1 times multiplier on the strength of the enchantment, and you can go up or down. The enchantment strength is done by an approximation of the of a regression of the general trends in enchantment strength. Bethesda elected not to use a formula, so it's an approximation. I don't know why they decided to eyeball it, but that's, you know, just Bethesda being Bethesda. That's the general shtick for generating enchanted versions. When you click OK, it saves the settings. So we have next crafting, tempering, and breakdown recipes. Open up this menu, and these are expandables because I'm insane and all my menus have to be different for no apparent reason. But basically the way that this works is that each of these does a different thing. So recipe scaling, in order to balance realism against game balance, whenever you have a weapon that's like a steel weapon, like a modded steel weapon, and it has like Daedric levels of damage in order for it to be viable late game, if it has a steel keyword, then it will use steel ingots in the crafting recipe. Recipe scaling is, instead of just using the basic steel sword recipe in order to get like a Daedric level item, a Daedric level modded steel sword, what recipe scaling does is it looks at the damage that the item has and compares it to the tier that the material tier, right? So like steel is lower end item, but Daedric is like a super high end item. And for every tier of its different, like for every tier of difference between the damage the item actually has and the tier of the material, the keyword material, it will increase the recipe. And in plain English, what that just means is if you have like a Daedric level steel sword, it'll cost like 32 or 32 steel ingots instead of 2 steel ingots to make. And it kind of balances game balance because it requires a lot versus realism. You don't quite want your steel sword to have Daedric crafting requirements. Doesn't make any sense. So that's my middle ground solution to that. Temper recipes. This is so generally light one-handed recipes have 1 ingot, and heavy two-handed recipes have 2 ingots in order to temper them. You can change that. These are options that were originally in Mater's breakdown recipes. If you don't know what a breakdown recipe is, basically it just takes a completed item and then breaks it back down into whatever it took to craft it. I think there's like a loss to it, but really with this, this is his function just plugged into my function. I didn't write this. I got his permission in order to use it. But this just enables or disables different types, like whether or not it will break down that type of item. So normally it won't break down equipped items. It also won't normally break down enchanted items. It'll normally break down Daedric items and usually break down DLC items. These are just options that were available in the original Mater's original formula that I decided to, or Mater's original code that I decided to implement here. So if you're familiar with Break It Down from Mater's, that's where these options are found. Last but not least are quality of life functions. So like I said at the very beginning, the output plugin section, but this mod is the output is going to accumulate a huge number of masters, especially if you're running on a bunch of stuff. So if you want to remove something from your loam order, it's simply going to break the plugin because it's going to have whatever you're removing as a master. So remove, right, quality of life plugin. What that does, I don't have to, for some reason I don't have the automated level list edition plugin just default made in my thing. And if it's not already made, it won't try and remove from anyways, it's not usually going to happen to you. But what this does is you have a file, and it has a whole bunch of masters. This is a list of masters of the file. And if you wanted to remove, say, Worm's Tooth from this mod, since it uses Worm's Tooth as a master, you'd have to first run the script on the output plugin, right, which is usually automated level list editions.esp. You'd run the script on that, you'd click remove, and then you would find the wormstooth.esp. You'd click add, and then you click OK. And if we open it back up, you'll see that Worm's Tooth no longer shows up as a master. It just goes through all of the records inside this ESP and removes any ones that depend on Worm's Tooth. So once that's done, you can just cancel out of the script. You don't have to run it. And you'll be able to remove Worm's Tooth from your load order. That's how that works. The next one is patch. This simplifies compatibility patching. It's just a sentence. I figure it's pretty easy to complete. You add items from, say, boy, that was more difficult than I thought it would be. Let's say the Book of UUMP, and to leveled lists from, and let's say Skyrim.esm. Right? So this would add items from UUMP to Skyrim.esm. Well, this wouldn't work. Well, that's a bad example because specifically Skyrim is loaded before UUMP, so it wouldn't work. But just it patches 2 mods. That's what it do. It patches 2 mods. You just complete the sentence, and then it will automatically generate a patch. It'll be compatibility patch, Book of UUMP, and Vigilant. That's what it'll say. And finally, there's the bulk, and I'm going to warn people about this one. This can take an extremely long time. Like, if you try and load your whole load order into this thing, it can take forever. Really what this is just set up to do is if you want to process a whole bunch of mods, you can set up a bulk run and then just leave it on overnight or however long it takes. So the output file here is just, well, it should be, I just changed it, but it should be automated level list edition.esp. But you can add a plugin. whatever plugin you happen to have, and you just click add and you click OK, and all of the valid items, weapons, armor, will be run through the script with whatever settings you've set up elsewhere. That's how that works. And that's the whole shebang. That would be all the different menus and what they do. I'm going to, real quick, I'm going to look at the output. I have somehow ended up where I started a section, whatever. So I'm going to go ahead and look at the output of one of these things. So this is a test piece of Iron Boots, and it just runs. I just ran it on this, and if you look by the see, what it really looks like is there's no reference by section. These are just test pieces that aren't referenced by anything. And then in order to implement it, I just ran the default script on this, right? And what you have is a whole bunch of references, specifically because the enchanted versions each count as a reference. So as you can see, there's tons of different enchanted versions. They're all added to the level list themselves. And then there's a chance leveled list for that was added to the different lists. And you got temple recipes and crafting recipes, and it works. Thing do, thing work. And that's the thing. I will be monitoring the page. This thing has almost 10,000 lines of code at this point, so I'm expecting bugs like a biblical plague. But I will be monitoring it. I'll be trying to fix things as they go along, but it's a project. It's called an open beta for a reason. It will take time to get 100%, but it works generally at this point. And that's the thing do.